All right, now we are on to assignment 4, and we have to, as the first requirement of assignment 4, turn one of our thumbnail sketches into a refined sketch. Sometimes this requires drawing it all over again, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. What is the difference between a thumbnail sketch and a refined sketch? It means you fully understand where the black shapes are and where the blank space is. So for this one, I tried to design with that in mind, so it's pretty straightforward. All of this is going to get filled in with black. The eye hole would be empty space. Both of the wings would be filled in with black. But before I do that, I can also use my compositing knowledge in a raster program like Photopea or Photoshop to mess with it a little bit. So I can just make a duplicate of it, hit Command T, or in Photopea, Option Command T, and I might play with warp and just kind of push and pull it a little. Maybe to de-emphasize the size of the head, right? Play more with the body. And then you'll see in logo design what you have a lot. So it was like this, now it's like this. And that's just a little bit more fluid. And in logo design, what you'll see a lot is a lot of replication. You know, a lot of the same thing used in multiple ways. You can think of it as repetition, but it's just internal compositing. So I'm going to duplicate this wing. So let me duplicate it this way with a lot of empty space around it. I'm going to hit Command J, duplicate that wing, and then I'm going to try it at different angles. I could try it at different sizes as well. The things that I use my eraser for in my sketchbook, I can use a raster program for here, right? And I say, do I like that better or do I like that better? I think I like it that way. And then, let's kind of clean up behind it. I'll mask a little area. I'll use clone stamp to kind of clean it up. All right. So now I've changed it. Now maybe I can duplicate that wing again and then flip it horizontally. Tilt it and have this wing match it exactly, right? So instead of it being a totally different drawing, different wing shape, I have the same shape used twice. And I can see if I like that, more or less. So do I like that or do I like that? What do you guys think? I think I know. And I think as for a logo, for a symbol to be instantly readable, I think I like that. Because using the replication of that same wing here, even though it might not be as dimensional, right? It just helps you see it all very clearly and symbolically. Now what do? Now I'm going to merge them all as one layer, but I'll do it in a non-destructive way so I can always get back to how I got there. So what did I do first? I duplicated it and I stretched it out, right? And then what did I do? I replaced the wing and changed its angle a little bit, and then I replicated that. And bottom line is you want to be happiest with your refined sketch, but I'm not done. So I'm going to hold down Option, go to Layer, say Merge Visible. So now I can compare this version with the first version. So this or this. Right? And I like this one. So now I'm ready to refine it further. So I'll duplicate it. And you have to think back to our very first exercise, our line art composite, our line art jumble. And I'm just going to go and try to clean this up into black and white. So I go to Image Adjustment Levels, and I'm going to push the white really far. That's going to clean up all my sketchbook paper and erase marks. And then I'm going to make the blacks really dark. Right. And I can bring them pretty close together. And if I need to, I can even use a brush with black to fill in any gaps. Like it got a little thin here, so I could fill that in if I needed to, right? And now that it's all kind of black and white pretty much, I can use my paint bucket with the default black, and I should be able to just fill it in. And that way I can see how those shapes work as just black and white shapes. Now sometimes when you do that, you realize, oh, I liked it better before. Now there's a few reasons for that, and I'm going to show you. So I'm going to take the opacity down, and I'm going to show you one thing that I liked better when it was an outline instead of filled in, and that was the mouth. Because with the outline, I could see the inside shape that the line made for the mouth, but when it all gets filled in, it's the outside shape, right? So what do? Well, I'm going to use my polygonal lasso, and I'm just going to cut that triangle out for the mouth. Boom. So now when I fill it in with black at full opacity, right? Now I like that shape of the mouth a little bit more than how soft it was before. Does that make sense? So that's refining your sketch, so you really understand your shapes. Are these curves exactly what I want? No. They could be a little bit better, but I can fix that as a vector. I don't need to obsess about it at this point. It's why I'm not putting it up to a higher resolution and try to clean all these up, right? That's not exactly what I need to do right now. Especially if I put it at a 0 feather, right? But I did want to resolve that mouth shape for myself because I wasn't quite sure why it didn't look good. Okay, so now I have my refined sketch. I know clearly where my black shapes should go. And I could get picky about it, but we'll move on to the next step. So now what do? I save it as the first thing I'm going to submit for assignment 4. So this is SP for me 25 to Karl, always say with your name, refined or assignment 4 refined sketch. I'm going to save it as a PSD to the desktop just so I have these steps. But what do I post to Canvas? I need to save it as a JPEG. You can export it out of Photopea or you can use Photoshop. I'm glad Photopea is working for most of your devices, though it is not working for me. All right, so now I can close this. Now I have my refined sketch, which is here. I'm going to mark that orange. Boom, there it is. Now I can go to Canvas. There we are. And I am now done with Proving Ground 2 because I've posted my 3 thumbnails and I've written a comment to someone else on their work. So remember, you can see your comments just by looking at the reply underneath your post. Like that. Like that. So make sure you're replying to people. You need to each respond to at least one person, but you can always do more. And make sure that you post all 3 of your sketches, right? Even if you don't like them. This Proving Ground is all about stretching your idea into uncomfortable territory. Now I'm going to go to Next. And I'm going to post my first requirement for assignment 4, which is a refined sketch. But better than this sketch, because this came before the Proving Ground was assigned, we want to decide where the blacks are. They had to decide that as a vector, and it made them actually change their design. So you want to be able to anticipate where those shapes are going to go. So I'm going to edit my post, and I'm going to add the first requirement. Refine sketch as a confident plan for your black shape vector. At a passing glance, it can almost work as your logo design, except that it's pixel-based, right? And just isn't going to look as clean as what our vector can look like. So what do we do? And you see that this is actually a pretty big difference from my thumbnail in like the subtle, precise ways that matter for logo design and for vectors. That change of the wing, the change of the mouth, the slight change of the curve of the tail, all of that makes a difference in how it's perceived and how it scales. Because a good logo design should be able to be read that small. Still be clear, engaging, and versatile. All right, so I'm going to post that refined sketch. And now I get to open that refined sketch in a vector program. For the first time, we're actually going to use a vector software. Now, the professional Adobe software that I teach in the morning is Adobe Illustrator. The freeware that we are going to use, it's in the assignment directions. It's called Vectr.com, without the O. So Vectr.com. And here's a link to that program. And they used to have a really helpful like tip site with tutorials, but now they've added AI, and so you have to get past all the AI stuff because that's where they make a lot of their money. So we're on Vectr.com. We're designing an SVG graphic. So you want the SVG editor. SVG is the oldest generic form of vector format. It stands for Scalable Vector Graphic. So as long as we can output it as an SVG, we have a vector. So we click on that, and then we're going to click on, we're going to ignore this, we're going to click on new artwork. And you can log on, and just like in Photopea, you can use its storage, like save your designs. What's nice is it's free, and vectors take a lot less memory than Photopea raster files. But I'm going to name it. This is a new file. And I'm going to name it, Karl, assignment 4. And what do I want to call this? Winged serpent symbol. Now for the size, I'm actually going to do a size we're pretty familiar with from our animation. 800 by 800 pixels. Why does it have pixels on it if it's a vector? That just gives you what's called the artboard. It just gives you a set of pixels on the screen to build your design. Doesn't make sense to make it huge because it has to fit on a screen anyway to build it. But the vector you create can match any size you want. So then I say create. Now I am going to upload my JPEG, just like dragging an image onto Photopea. So I'm going to bring my refined sketch on. Here it is. Just like on Photopea, it comes in as a smart object. I'm going to grow it by holding down, not holding down, but just dragging from the corner and scaling it to be a little bit bigger within my 800 by 800 pixel frame. And the problem is I'm going to be making black shaped vectors. This is my sketch. I don't want my sketch to be black and white. I want it to be onion skinned. So the next thing I'm going to do is take its opacity down to about 20% and onion skin it. Now you'll see this looks very different than Photoshop, but this is actually a little bit easier to learn and use than Adobe Illustrator is, which is also very different than Photoshop.